Hello friends, welcome to this video session. This session is about modulation and demodulation, which are the basic concepts of communication system. So let us start. In our introduction part, we'll study about some basic points like communication, source of information, communication channel, baseband and passband signals. Now coming to the communication process. What is a communication process? Communication process is a process of establishing relations between two or more points. You can say devices rather than points. It is a process of establishing relation between two or more devices to have data transfer between those devices. Now coming to the source of information, it is basically a transmitter device, not medium. Then coming to the communication channel are the basically they are the devices which are used to connect the devices uh, which are used in communication process, means medium through which the devices are connected to each other, like air, telephone wires, optical fiber, etc. Now coming to the baseband and passband signals. Baseband refers to the original data signal, means this data signal is not converted into any another form. This is original. Uh, this is in its original form and with high frequency. Whereas the passband refers to the filtered signal that was originally modulated into onto a carrier. An important point to note here is baseband signals can be analog as well as digital. Now we'll move forward to modulation and demodulation. Modulation is a process of varying one or more properties of periodic waveform. It is a process of converting the data signals. You can say it is a process of changing the properties of the signal from coming from the source of information or coming from the transmitter. Next we have demodulation. In modulation process, we can change the properties of signal like phase of the signal, frequency of the signal, etc. Now next is demodulation. Demodulation is a process of regaining the original signal from the modulated signal. You can say it is a process of extracting the original information. And the important point is modulation is done at the transmitter side and the demodulation process is at receiver side. You can see the image below. Here a modulator is at transmitter side and demodulator is at receiver side. Modulator does the modulation and demodulator is used to demodulate the signal. Modulator is used at transmitter side to modulate the data signal coming from the transmitter, and after modulation it sends the data over communication channel, and at the receiver side demodulator is used to demodulate the demodulated signal. Demodulate to modulated signal. Now we'll discuss about types of modulation. First is continuous wave modulation. Continuous wave modulation is when if the carrier wave is continuous in nature. For example, amplitude modulation, and the second is angle modulation. Amplitude modulation is when we modulate the amplitude of the carrier signal, and angle modulation have two types of modulation. Again, the first is phase modulation and frequency modulation. Phase modulation is when we modulate the signal with its phase, and like this. The frequency modulation is when we modulate the signal by frequency. Now coming to the second type of modulation, which is pulse modulation. Pulse modulation is when the carrier wave is pulse type in its nature. Here we have three types of pulse modulation, which are pulse amplitude modulation, which is also known as PAM, and the second is pulse duration modulation, which is also known as PDM, and the third one is pulse position modulation, which is also known as PPM. In this modulation, when we modulate the signal with amplitude, then it is known as the when we modulate the signal modulate the pulse of the signal with amplitude, then it is known as pulse amplitude. And like this, when we modulate the pulse of the signal like with time, then it is known as the pulse duration modulation. And like this, when we modulate the signal with its position, then it is known as the pulse position modulation. Now we need to discuss about why we need for modulation. What is the purpose of the modulation, and we can see what are the benefits of the modulation. The first one is practicality of antenna. Means using modulation we can reduce the size of the antenna used in communication process. Basically, length of antenna is lambda by 4. Lambda, where lambda is the wavelength of the signal. It is an important point you have to note down. It is an important point according to the exams. The length of the antenna is wavelength over 4. The second reason is remove interference. Interference is just a disturbance. Basically, a signal have its own frequency range. Like our audio signal frequency is 20 Hz to 20 kilohertz. This is also an important point according to the exam point of view. Which is our audio signal frequency is 20 Hz to 20 kilohertz, and the signals are modulated so that to avoid interference of signals with each other. There are loads of signals in the medium. Like if we say an optical fiber can transfer 10 raised to power 38, I think, I don't remember exactly, it is 10 raised to power 38. An optical fiber can transfer 10 raised to power 38 signals at a single time. And the next reason is reduction of noise. Noise can also be reduced by using the modulation. The next and last reason, which is higher value of SNR value. SNR is basically signal to noise ratio. Modulation is used to increase the SNR ratio. With this, our introduction part to the communication process is completed. Thank you.